you doing, guys? Today I thought I'd put a quick video together on an engine that I'm working on for somebody. It's specifically off an RJ58. When we take a look at the numbers here, we can kind of come in. It's a K91T. The serial is 403782, and the spec number is 31307A. It does have a Shinaki recoil. Carter N carburetor. I did kind of start working on this before I said to myself, oh, you know what, I should make a video. Essentially, they wanted me to kind of take a look at the motor and see what kind of condition's in. I'll be honest with you, it's in really good condition, and I really don't think it needs to be torn into. I think just a good, maybe clean out the bottom of the oil pan, get the sludge out of it. I did just measure the valve lash. It's right within specification. The motor itself has great compression. So in my opinion, I wouldn't tear into it. But when we take a look at the book, valve clearance intake cold is 5 to 9. The valve clearance exhaust cold 11 to 15. It actually measured out right here. When we take a look at the things, 5.9 intake, and measured out to 7, so it's basically right there. And exhaust is 11 to 15. It's at 15. It's on the high side, but to tear the motor apart and cut a valve seat, to regrind everything, when it has as good compression as it has, I'm not going to do that. There's no point in tearing into it. I did tear apart the breather. I'm going to clean all this out, get all the stuff out of it. I'm going to go in there and clean out the lifter or the valve spring area, make sure that's good and clean. We'll go ahead and pull the head, take a look at the bore and the valves itself, but I think that's probably going to be just fine. And I'll probably pull the oil pan off and clean the interior of the oil pan just to get rid of any sludge. So let me get to cleaning this and putting it back together, because I was provided 2 new gaskets so we can get the whole breather system back together. It's essentially an outer cover, an inner tub area, which has this little this is actually, that's the rubber that seals it on the post, but this is that is what do you call, an oil control situation. And there's a little reed valve in there. So we're going to get this all cleaned up. We'll get it all put back together. That'll be just fine. All right, let me get that done and let me get it back. As you can see, I thoroughly cleaned the breather system, so it's all nice and clean. I did plug up these areas. I'm going to get my cookie wheel with the die grinder and clean the surfaces. And then I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the breather. We'll talk about the carburetor in a minute, but reinstall the breather. The one thing about the breather is when you put this together, because you have a gasket that goes against the block, then this thing slides in, and it has to be oriented correctly because there's a little oil drain hole in the bottom. So you got to make sure you put it in this direction. Then there's another gasket that goes on this. This guy goes right here, and that seals the stud, the 1/4-20 stud coming out of the block. And then there's the nut and the lock washer. When you tighten it down, you don't go to 500 foot-pounds. You just snug it down so it's snugly tight, okay? And if it starts to weep a little oil off the bottom, you just tighten it up just a hair more. Sometimes I see people, man, they just drive that thing right in there, and all it does is deform the top piece, and then it's really, you can never get it to seal. So just remember, when you work on small engines, be light-handed. You don't need to be heavy-handed. All right, let me get this done. And there you go. So that's how it's all set up. The little drain holes right here, the breather hole that actually causes the reed valve to go back and forth is right behind that. The rubber seal is on the stud, and then there's this little grassy, plastic grassy thing that catches the oil before it gets blown out, or at least controls before it gets blown out the breather, because this is how it goes. This is how it's bolted on the motor. So we're right there. So this whole area plus the valve area I'm going to call done. So let me go ahead and bolt this up, and we'll go ahead and pull the head off. The head is off, and as you can see, it's in good shape. Somebody must have surfaced it at one time. It's nice and I mean, that's pretty clean. I mean, you're really not going to get a cleaner head than that. I will run it through my parts washer just to make sure it's good and clean. When we take a look at the bore, yes, the bore is glazed over, but very minimal, if no ridge. I mean, this thing's in really good shape. I'm going to rotate the piston up. It does have standard on it, so it is a standard bore. When you grab the piston, you go back and forth, not with the crank, against the crank. There's like little to no movement in that piston, so even so we'll go down. I mean, it doesn't move pretty much at all. If there's anything to complain about, there is one little speck of rust, the pitting in the bore. It's right there, but as you can see, it's above the actual ring mark, so that's just a non-issue. There's nothing to even do with that. Even when we peer down the bore, the overall gap spacing between the piston and the cylinder wall doesn't look that excessive. I mean, this thing's in really good shape. We'll go ahead and pull up one of the valves. Here's the exhaust valve. I mean, there's just a hair of movement in that guide. But I mean, compared to the other engines I've worked on just recently, that's like darn near NOS. This one, the intake valve, is nice and solid. So I'm thinking, again, just a good cleaning upstairs here. I just clean it really well, wash the head, and put a new, I mean, it had a fairly new head gasket in it. In actuality, I should use this one on the grab bag Kohler. I mean, it's so nice, but they gave me a new head gasket to put on it. So we'll go ahead and I'm going to clean this really, really well. And then I'm going to clean the head really well. We'll get the new head gasket and we'll torque the bolts into place. Because honestly, I'm just going to clean the valve faces and stuff like that. Other than that, there's just absolutely no reason to tear this motor apart. Run it and I mean, just run it. It's not going to, you're not going to work the hell out of it, and it's perfectly fine. Keep the oil changed. Everything is clean and ready to go. The deck is clean, the valves are clean, the piston's clean. I cleaned the bore and then re-oiled the bore, put the piston up on top. So you can see there's the oil. We put that up, yep. Put that, I'll probably wipe that out one more time before we go any further, but head is cleaned, all the threads are cleaned, all the bolts are clean. Just got to get the new head gasket. Probably don't even need the new head gasket. This one is still in really good shape, but we'll put the new head gasket in it just in case, so that way we don't have any issues. So let's get that together. You see me torque these things together. I'm just going to do it by the spec in the book as well as the pattern. With the oil pan off, I don't see anything of alarming situations. I mean, it has the standard amount of sludge oil at the bottom of the oil pan for an engine that's been around since the 50s, and I honestly don't think anybody's ever been in this motor, because when we take a look at the rod retaining tabs, they're not chewed up at all. Those are probably factory set. The side of the rod looks good. If I grab the rod, it has standard side to side movement, but if I go up and down or back and forth, I mean, like up and down this way, not up and down that way, it's in really good shape. Another telltale sign that an engine's been worn out pretty bad is if you look at the points lobe, you can see that there's absolutely no wear marks on. I mean, I won't say absolutely no wear mark, but there's no major wear mark where that point rod rides on the lobe itself. Let me just, yeah, I mean, that's in really nice shape. The cam looks good. The bottom of the piston, look how nice and clean the bottom of the piston is. Unlike one of the pistons I showed you from the grab bag Kohler, where it was just totally brown, where the oil had just cooked on it. Yeah, this motor's in really good shape. I don't see anything. All the factory primers pretty much all still intact. Yeah, this engine doesn't need anything. I would just run this motor. I'm going to go ahead and clean all the gasket material off. I'm going to get this oil pan good and clean, and then we'll reinstall it with the new gasket. Everything is cleaned up. All the surfaces are nice and clean. I cleaned out the oil pan. It's all the sludge, everything's gone. The surface is nice and clean. I'm going to wipe it down with brake cleaner one more time, and then grab actually the pan gaskets right behind me. So wipe all this down, clean the bolts off real quick, get the pan gasket, put it back together. Then the next thing is the carburetor. I cracked the carburetor open, and some interesting stuff found inside this carburetor. I have no idea what this is, and I'll be honest, this shit stinks, man. I don't know what this guy runs through this stuff, but it's everywhere. It's all right there, and because the carburetor has been flipped over, you can even see the stuff here. Let me get my little flashlight here. You can see this stuff is even bleeding down over here. I mean, it's like sand or mud, or I don't even know what it... Yeah, I don't know what this crap is. Whatever it is, I don't do it to my engines. But so it looks like we're going to have to go ahead and pull this entire carburetor apart and just clean it. The owner did say there was probably an issue with the float. I think, I don't know, I think it's like the I don't know, the red dust or the sandstone dust that's in the base of this thing that could be the problem. But we'll go ahead, we'll pull it apart, we'll clean them up, and we'll clean it up, and then we'll get it back together and see what happens. All right, let's get to cleaning. Okay, so I got the carburetor all cleaned up, and I reset the float, checked the needles, made sure everything's clean, blew it out with a whole bunch of air. I checked and made sure the oil's up to snuff. And I got fuel to the carburetor to the best of my knowledge. I didn't crack the bowl, but I blew into the gas tank, and we should have fuel there. We do have fuel in the filter, as you can see, so we should be ready to light this off. And there you go, guys, another Kohler engine. I mean, this one runs mid. There's absolutely no ticking. There's nothing on this one. I told the owner that it was fine, and there was no need to tear it apart. The exhaust is loose. That's why it wobbled its way down. It vibrated down. No big deal. But I mean, I think that's pretty much perfect. And this engine needs nothing. What we did to it was probably not even worth doing, but it's got a clean bill of health. Okay, guys, I know I've had a lot of Kohler K91 content lately. It just happened to be that I had a number of them coming around. But if you could please like, share, and subscribe. Ring the notification bell so you get notified when I probably do another Kohler. And we got a whole bunch of other content coming up on the channel. I'm gonna have a small video either just before this one or maybe just after it, showing the new projects that are coming up. You guys have a great day. Bye-bye.